Every time I talked, I got ridiculed, rejected, judged, and I created a story in my head that I think most of us have, that in order to stay safe, I need to stay silent. And that's what I did. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. Whatever I want and desire in my life, in order to get it, I need to pass through discomfort.
Meet Gabriel. He sees Hugo in the hallway and immediately feels anxious. Hugo is a VP who Gabriel really admires, the kind of leader Gabriel wants to be. And here's an opportunity, a chance to connect with Hugo. But instead, he puts his eyes to the ground, gives a small nod, and keeps walking. Steps later, he feels the regret. When he gets to his desk, he replays this moment over and over again. Gabriel thinks back to the conference from last month where he had so many opportunities to start a conversation with Hugo. Whether it was at the coffee machine or between sessions, Hugo was totally approachable. Gabriel could have connected, really built up a relationship with the person he admires, but the thought kept coming up, which shut him down. He doesn't want to talk to me anyway. Gabriel is a data engineer for a web services company. He's the person that people call when there are major systems issues, and Gabriel can fix it faster than most. He's sharp, he's effective, he's driven. But when it comes to moments where Gabriel should speak up, especially when this is around authority figures, his confidence just disappears. Gabriel wants to get into a leadership position. He wants to have a greater impact, and he wants to be a better provider for his family. And he knows deep down that the reason he keeps getting passed over is not because of his ability. It's because no one notices him. After work, at home with his wife and his 4-year-old son, the thought lingers. Gabriel wants to be a better provider for his family, and he wants his son to grow up seeing a father who is a confident communicator, not someone who shrinks in big moments. Today, I'm speaking with Erik Dominguez, keynote speaker, communications trainer, and public speaking consultant with over 25 years of experience. When Erik immigrated to the US at a young age, he really struggled with English. So much so that he was afraid to speak, and ultimately found his voice through speech and debate. And now he helps other leaders do the same. And I'm excited to hear how Erik would help someone like Gabriel work through his fear and become a more confident, influential communicator. My name is Jay Abbasi, and welcome to Unstuck. Real people, real stories, real solutions. While the details are changed to protect anonymity, what you just heard is based on a true story of challenges that come up in the real world. And we discuss how to navigate these environments with practical tips to help you get unstuck and build a more fulfilling, impactful, and balanced life and career. So Erik, you have something on your LinkedIn profile that I have to ask you to kick things off with. You have this question: how does a terrified to speak young kid become a keynote speaker and communications trainer? So I'm going to ask you that question. How did that happen?
Yeah, how did that happen? I ask myself that question all the time as well. Yeah, growing up, I grew up between two cultures. So I was born in Mexico, but even though I was raised in the Mexican culture and language, my mom, who's from the United States, she's from California, she raised us bilingual. And so I had this, heart for both the Mexican and American culture. I had heritage in both cultures. And when we moved to the United States, I quickly found out that even though I could speak English, my English wasn't good enough for the English speakers, right? My English was not good enough for the English speakers, and my Spanish wasn't good enough for the Spanish speakers either. And so every time I talked, I got ridiculed, rejected, judged, and I created a story in my head that I think most of us have, that in order to stay safe, I need to stay silent. And that's what I did. right? I held back who I was for the majority of my childhood, all the way up until right before my junior year of high school. There was a speech and debate workshop being offered, and I accidentally wandered in there. And I say accidentally, jokingly. I did not accidentally wander in there. There was a girl who I had a crush on, who had invited me into this workshop.
That'll do it.
That's it. That's how all great stories start, right? There was a girl. And like any 15-year-old with a crush, I was like, okay, I'll go in. We'll see what it's about. Even though public speaking was one of my worst fears. And, when I experienced that workshop, I saw that I wasn't trapped, right? I thought that I was trapped. I thought that I was never going to be able to adequately communicate who I was or what I wanted. And I started to learn the tools of confidence. And once those tools really solidified in me, as I started to grow, I realized I want to give other people the same opportunity. As I don't want them to feel like they're on mute, right? That's how I felt the majority of my life up to that point. And so I want to help other people speak up for themselves, speak up for their stories, speak up for what their desires are, speak up for what their dreams are. So that's the story as to how an introverted, shy, terrified to speak kid transformed into a communication trainer and public speaker.
Yeah. Well, you brought up the word safety.
Yeah.
You said it didn't feel safe. You then went to this class or the debate and the speaking, and was it that it gave you safety, or did it somehow teach you to just embrace what's unsafe? I guess how did you work through it when you made this decision? And I'm sure it wasn't just like instantaneous, but gradual. But what was it? Was it started to feel safer, or it was like you learned how to embrace the fear of it all?
I think there's different components to it. First, safety isn't created by saying it, right? The instructor, I still remember her, Mrs. Vicki Drennan. She was a phenomenal teacher and a coach. And she didn't say, hey, this is a safe space, right? We like to say that everywhere in classrooms and workplaces, it's a safe space. You can't just say this is a safe space. You have to create that safe space. So I remember distinctly the first day she had us do activities where she demonstrated that it was okay to mess up, right? That's what created safety. It was a zone where I could practice and make mistakes in an area where I wouldn't be reprimanded. I wouldn't be called out. I would simply be guided into the next skill. So that's the first component. And the second component, I learned in that particular workshop and throughout that nothing good happens in our comfort zone, right? No skill is truly developed when we are comfortable. And a lot of times people misunderstand comfort and safety. They think, well, I'm not comfortable, therefore I'm not safe. So I learned the difference between the two. I'm not safe is when I speak up, someone's going to make fun of me, right? Comfortable is when I speak up, everything's going to stay the same, but I don't want that, right? I want the discomfort of, I'm going to share something with you and you may or may not like it. You may not or may not receive it, but that's me stepping into that vulnerability.
I like the discernment between safety and comfort. I don't think I ever heard it that way. That's really good. So, okay. So what you're saying is if I do feel uncomfortable, it isn't the same as feeling unsafe, even if would be the initial feeling, right? It's the initial reaction is if I'm uncomfortable, I'm unsafe. What you're telling me is no, they're not the same thing, and be able to discern discomfort from a sense of or lack of safety.
Exactly. There are spaces where we are not safe, right? Where we are going to get, aggressively ridiculed, rejected, mocked, judged, whatever the case may be. And while those risks are always present, especially in a public speaking setting, we cannot rely on comfort to guide us. Rather, we get to rely on what message am I trying to deliver? What gift am I trying to deliver to the audience? Knowing full well they may or may not receive that gift. And that's okay.
Yeah. How have you trained yourself to lean into discomfort then, Eric? How have you made that something? Because all the great work that you do now, I'm sure, is because you're able to do that. Was there something, or are there things that you do to lean into that discomfort?
Yeah, and I couldn't tell you exactly why this is the case. There, I've taken many personality assessments, and my therapist could probably tell you a whole lot more as to why this is true. But for the majority of my life, especially after I joined that speech and debate team, I realized that the best way to get the results that you want in life
Mm.
is find the fear that is holding you back and go directly into it. You know, one of my favorite quotes is Joseph Conrad: the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. That's it,
Mm.
right? The treasure I seek, whatever I want and desire in my life, in order to get it, I need to pass through discomfort. So it started with speech and debate, right? I didn't even want to have conversations with people. I just wanted to be left alone so nobody would tease me. But instead, I stepped to front of audiences to deliver my message. The other thing happened somewhat in athletics. You know, growing up as a kid, especially, I mean, both growing up in Mexico and the United States, you were judged by your athletic ability, right? That was the social status. Well, I had these two incredibly flat feet, like they were medically flat. I had to wear these like boots, kind of Forrest Gump style boots. So I wasn't an athlete at all. But right after, like during high school, I just let that stop me. I'm sorry, I didn't
Mm.
stop me. And I went out for the track team because I was like, I can run in a straight line or I can run in a circle. I'm not going to be very fast, but at least I'm going to do something. And that's the next lesson. I learned so much from running track. And then as I feared athletics, as I feared scary gyms or whatnot, I stepped more and more into them.
Yeah. I love that quote that you shared about the cave.
Yeah.
Got me thinking of Joseph Campbell's work,
Yeah.
where the hero's journey, where in every
Mhm.
journey someone goes into a cave. He actually even references a cave too, where
Exactly.
we go into that cave and then we come out a reformed, or a rebirth happens when we exit the cave. So what are the things that help you to be able to lean into that discomfort while still feeling safe? Because I think that's ultimately the problem, right? People say, okay, I it's so fearful. It's so unsafe for me to speak up for,
Mhm.
Gabriel in the story, to be able to go up to Hugo. It feels so unsafe that it holds someone back. How can you lean into that discomfort while still establishing a sense of safety within yourself?
Yeah, I see it as a balance scale, right? I can choose to stay comfortable. I can choose to keep my mouth shut during a meeting. I can choose to give a very scripted, very standard presentation that's not going to put, me at risk of anything. I can choose not to have a conversation with my supervisor. I can choose all of that. And what results am I getting from there? Right? If we repeat the same actions, we're going to get the same results.
Mm.
So as soon as the pain, I wouldn't even say the pain, and I would say discomfort. And I have another word for the discomfort as well. As soon as we feel that discomfort, is that discomfort worth getting the result that you want? And so when I'm feeling resistance, when I'm feeling uncomfortable, when I know I'm safe, I'm just kind of scared. What result do I want? It's
Yeah.
likely on the other side of me going into that fear. While I'm thinking about it, a lot of people, again, confuse safety and comfort. And I also want to add, it may not necessarily be unsafe or uncomfortable, it's just unfamiliar. Especially when we are learning communications, we all have learned a proper way of communicating, right? We've learned
Yeah.
this childhood through education, whatever the case may be. And when we're taught new ways, when we're forced to stretch our comfort zones, it's uncomfortable. It feels uncomfortable, but what it really is it's unfamiliar. It's like playing the piano for the first time. You're going to be really clunky at things at first. It feels unfamiliar. But the more you engage in it, the more practice you get, the better it will be.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're naturally inclined to seek out the familiar.
Exactly.
Right? Like that's what we are programmed to do. And in many ways, that's what our ancestors needed in order to survive, right? And
Yeah,
so like
exactly.
it's not all bad. What I like about how you're framing it is we have to recognize what will the outcome be if we move into the unfamiliar. So
Mhm.
so we, in other words, the individual needs to go, okay, wait, what's on the other side of this discomfort? What's the experience I'll have? Whether that's something like promotion or more money, or if it's impact, if it's influence, or something with one's relationship, it's okay, that's the experience I'll have if I lean into the discomfort. Another way of looking at it, I'm curious to get your thoughts, is what will be the negative consequence
Mm.
if I don't lean into that discomfort? That can also be a driver.
Yeah. I mean, the negative consequences are real. And
Yeah.
I'm not one to tell, no, you'll be fine. Everything will work out just fine. Everything always works out. Sure, yeah, whatever. But sometimes you try something and it fails epically, right? This happens all the time. I try a new joke, I try a new piece of content, I try a new video, and it's like, wah, wah, doesn't land. Okay. Well, that's uncomfortable. That doesn't feel great. There are consequences to the choices that we make. But you cannot get to a place of confidence without testing and practicing, right? So if I go and try to have a conversation with my supervisor and I have this image in my head of how it's going to go and it doesn't go quite right, which by the way, we almost always judge erroneously how things went when it comes to communication, because we're in a high stakes, high stress environment. So we're not actually thinking logically, right? So if I go and I have this conversation and it doesn't go well, of course I'm going to feel the pain. Of course I'm going to feel the sting. That's always going to be the case, no matter how much training, no matter how much practice you have. But that then gives you facts. It gives you information. What didn't work well about
Yeah.
this? What didn't work well with my approach? Was it the right time to have the conversation? Was it the right phrasing? Did I approach in a right way? That's where most people skip. As they try something, it doesn't go well, and then they punt instead of reflecting, okay, what worked and what didn't work?
Yeah. I can relate to this very much because recently I tested something and it didn't go very well. And I feel like it was helpful feedback. So
Yeah.
I was doing a virtual session. It was a virtual keynote, and I wanted to test out this new story. And I told the story, and you could feel it. Like the energy wasn't so great. The engagement wasn't as much as I was hoping. And when I reflected on it, Erik, what I realized was the story was just too long. It was a drawn out story. And while I love the story, I still think it could be useful in other vehicles. In a virtual session, it just didn't land because you know
Yeah.
how it is. People, their attention goes elsewhere. However, like I look at it and I say that was really helpful. That was valuable. I would not have learned this
Yeah.
way of approaching a virtual session had I not made this quote unquote error. And that data will then inform future sessions.
Exactly. And let me ask you a question about this story too.
Yeah.
Is I'm pretty confident, maybe the story didn't land the way that you wanted to, but it didn't do a disservice to the audience, right? They didn't just say, oh, this is terrible. I'm going to log off right now and send a complaint, right? Maybe it didn't land the way you wanted it to, but it wasn't catastrophic. And I think most people, they go to the catastrophic instead of, okay, I can revise that. I can change that.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective. It definitely was not catastrophic. It
Right,
definitely was
exactly.
not one like, my business didn't fall apart.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
that was
But
the story.
But we think it does. Like in the moment, it's like I feel it. Like I tell a story and it's just like, wah, wah, like, oh no, this is the end. Right? That's how you feel. This is it.
Yeah. Right, right. And it, it's funny because now that we're talking about it, there were people who at the end said that was their best takeaway, So
Yeah.
there were some
Oh,
people who really
yeah.
got value. It was more of just like the greater collective group. I kind of felt the energy go away.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I think is interesting to explore with taking those kinds of risks and leaning into what might feel unsafe is, all right, let's say I want to have that conversation with my manager about something. I want to voice an idea. Well, what will happen if I don't do it?
Yeah.
Right? If I don't do it, if I continue playing it safe and I continue keeping my voice muted, what will it then lead to? Well, I may never get an opportunity to have the impact that I want to have. I may never be able to move up in my career. I'll just stay the same. I think there is value to going through those if then scenarios of what if I don't lean into my discomfort?
Yeah. Yeah. That's it is we evaluate based off of our comfort level and not based off of the actual result that can be there for us if we choose to step into that particular discomfort. And I also think that the danger that is not always talked about is if I stay comfortable, if I'm like, okay, I don't give the presentation, I don't have the conversation, I don't go to the networking event. If I stay comfortable, then it can create a seed of bitterness in me. Right? Like, oh, I didn't get the results I wanted in this career, in this role because of X, Y, and Z. Or I wish I could, but it's just really hard to do 1, 2, and 3. And for me, I would rather say I tried and I flopped than I wish I could have. And we all have I wish I could have moments. That's life, right?
Yeah.
But what I teach myself and what I encourage others to do is get the facts, right? Don't think what would it look like for me to have a conversation? What would it look like for me to give the presentation? No, go do it. Go do it and then get that feedback.
And go ahead. No, you were going to say.
Well, there's one thing that I also forgot to mention earlier about safety and how I went from that safety to being able to speak up for myself. I think a lot of times when it comes to communication and confidence, people will just give you the directive. Well, communicate more confidently or just be confident. Well, that's great. Like if we could just turn on that switch, then that'd be fantastic. But really, confidence is developed by actually doing it, right? And what's oftentimes missing is these tangible steps and processes. How do I communicate confidently? How do I give a better presentation? And so that's also what's essential in this is what's the next step, not just blanket statements.
Right. Yeah. I think the part about actually doing it is something I really hope our audience doesn't overlook. Like, I want to ask you about those specific steps in a moment. I do want to really highlight what you said about actually committing to the action itself.
Yeah.
So without even knowing how it's all going to go, I was just before you and I hopped on this call, I was with a coaching client of mine, and I told her this story, and it's just funny that this is coming up. It was when I was working for a renewable energy company. It was named Solar City. The VP had all the regional managers on a call. And the VP said, and there's like 25 of us. And the VP said, hey, we're going to start this new initiative. It's kind of like a podcast where we're going to do these major announcements for the entire region. And it's like, a lot of people on the east side of the US. And who would like to volunteer to help me? And I just in the moment raised my hand. I had no idea what it was. I had no idea how I would help with it, but I raised my hand and I said, Michael, I'd love to help. And he was like, all right, Jay, you're in, right? Erik, that then led to me working directly with a VP. Then later he moved positions. They needed someone else to replace the host. I became the host. My voice then going through the entire country for these monthly meetings. The head of training hears about me. The head of training then gives me a position within training, which leads to me running national training programs at Tesla, which leads me to do the work that I do today. Like if that didn't happen, right? If I didn't raise my hand, I may not be having this conversation with you right now.
That's wild. And That was a nanosecond of a decision.
Exactly.
It was yeah, I'll do it. And if you hadn't, right, if you had hesitated and you didn't get that position, you didn't get that role, where would you be? That's wild. That's a great story.
It's like the it was uncomfortable, like you said,
Yeah.
unfamiliar. However, I just was, you talk about it in a lot of your work, right? There was self-trust there. I just trusted that I'll figure it out. I just trusted that I don't know exactly what I need to do, but I think I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Now, talk to me a little bit about some of those steps, because you said, okay, with confidence, there are some things that you can do to, rather than just someone giving you that directive, be more confident.
Yeah.
You have some ways in which you can help people to cultivate that confidence in addition to, okay, actually doing the thing. What are some of those steps? What are some of the tools that you recommend people to consider to build up their confidence?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is other people can only trust us to the extent that we trust ourselves. So when we're trying to project confidence, we're actually saying, I am a person that you can trust. When you raised your hand in the meeting and said, yeah, I'll do it, you're really just saying, I'm someone that you can trust to give this a shot, right? So the first step is I own this step, right? I am responsible for this step. And the next aspect is that word responsibility. A lot of people think that responsibility is causality and it's also ownership, right? So like, I'm responsible for doing X, Y, and Z, but you're responsible for doing 1, 2, and 3. So we're kind of categorizing these roles. And while that may be true in certain contexts, developing confidence within yourself, responsibility is actually the ability to respond. That's confidence, is exactly what you said in your meeting, right? Or at least you thought it is like, I'm not really sure what this is. I'm not really sure all of the details and the nuts and bolts of it, but I know and I trust my background, my experience, my expertise. I will figure it out. I will be able to respond in that moment. And what a lot of people don't recognize is that when you step into that powerful responsibility, like I am able to respond, not necessarily I caused everything, but I can respond to everything, then that's where you have personal autonomy and power, right? You are in control of your results. You are in control of your experience and you're in control of how you respond to the variables in life. Whereas people who don't take that personal ownership, they just roll the dice. Oh, I wish I could, but my boss X, Y, and Z. Or I wish I could do it 1, 2, and 3, but all of these variable factors. Those variable factors are true. They're a component, but too often we give away our power to those variables instead of responding and being in ownership of our results.
Yeah. What would you say? I'm just imagining someone hearing the part about trust that you said.
Mhm.
Maybe it's Gabriel, someone like Gabriel saying, okay, Erik, I want to, but I don't trust myself.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Like I don't.
Yeah.
Like help me. How do I build up more trust? Because maybe they feel as though they don't have the evidence, so they feel as though they've never really done it, so they don't trust themselves yet. What would you say to somebody who says that?
I think a few things. The first and foremost is our brains are incredible at creating a list and gathering evidence as to why we fall short of our expectations and the expectations of others, right? That's what we do. At the end of the day, I recall my day and I'm like, that went wrong. That didn't go well. I didn't like this. I didn't answer this email. I didn't send this,
Right.
Whatever. And part of that is healthy. Part of that is good. At the end of the day, we want to reflect. Where do I need to grow? What do I need to prioritize? But we don't gather evidence for our talent. We don't recognize that most of the obstacles, not all, but most of the obstacles that we have faced a similar obstacle and overcome it in the past. So the first step is taking inventory of, okay, maybe you do fall short in these areas. Maybe you are behind in these areas. Where are you crushing it? Where are things working for you? What's actually working in your life? That's the first step. The second step is building your own credibility, right? Let me tell you, over the last 11 years or so, I've been through this process with myself of trusting myself. About 11 years ago, I woke up one day and I realized the reason I don't have the results in my life is because I don't trust myself. And I don't trust myself because I lie to myself all the time. I don't do the things that I say I'm going to do. I don't follow through on my responsibilities, or I get lazy, or I slip into bad habits, whatever the case may be. That's just being a human being. But you have to reverse that cycle. You have to gather evidence as to why you are trustworthy. Something I did just the month of March, I needed a responsibility check, right? I needed to be responsible for my actions and my results. And I was getting frustrated about just not being able to work out because of my schedule, yada, yada. So I said, you know what? Every day for the month of March, I'm going to do 100 push-ups. And I did 100 push-ups every day for the month of March. And it wasn't about the push-ups themselves, right? It was because it helped me and it woke me up, got me moving. But at the end of the day, I could say, I did my push-ups. I committed to something and I did it. So that's the next step, is even if it's small, right? Even if it's just incremental, let me build trust within myself by doing 5 push-ups a day or by reading 1 page a day, whatever the habit may be. That's where we start to develop our own trust. And the last thing, and I think this is really essential, is the concept of integrity. A lot of times people are hitting a wall because they're not aligned with their actions are not aligned with the results that they want in life. And when you are not aligned either explicitly or implicitly, you can't build confidence in something because you're always putting your ladder up against the wrong wall.
Yeah. Yeah, that first part about the evidence and how we so often are just thinking about all the mistakes we've made, where we've gone wrong. I mean, there's a lot of power to reflecting on, wait a minute, what have I actually achieved?
Yeah.
When did I do it right? You're not thinking about it. You're naturally not going to think about it. And I love that as a starting point. And then the second part you said was be intentional about ways in which you can build up that confidence. For example, you said the push-ups. So if it's someone who says, okay, I want to be a more confident communicator, and you're saying start small, what are some steps one could take specifically to say, okay, here's one way you can have this intention, execute, you may fail, and that's okay. These are ways in which you are building up that confidence as a communicator. What could that look like?
I'll give you the drill that I give anyone who asks me that question, right? How do I become a more powerful, confident communicator, either in one-on-one conversations or in presentations? But here's what happens is whenever we're in a high-stakes situation, again, we're not thinking logically because our bodies are being pumped with adrenaline, right? There's a lot at stake. And so because we're not thinking logically, because we're responding emotionally, that's where we get tongue-tied, right? We're trying to access the logical centers of our brain, but they're blocked by all the adrenaline that is helping us survive the experience. And so what I recommend to people, I call it spontaneous speaking. There's a lot of different words for it. Impromptu speaking is another one. But what I do, and this is a great way for anyone to improve their communication confidence, is I have prompts that I now am able to put into AI, like give me topics based off of these directions. And some of them are just general prompts, right? They're very friendly prompts, like, if you could go on vacation anywhere, where would you go and why? Or what is the favorite memory of a vacation? Or what is your favorite song and why does it soothe you? Whatever, like all of these different personality questions that you can't get wrong. So once those topics are generated, you take 1 minute to prepare your thoughts. That's it. You set a timer for 1 minute and maybe you jot a few things down and then you speak without interruption for 3 straight minutes, without interruption. And you basically give a speech as to where would you go on vacation or what is a memorable meal. What that does is because there is a limited time and a limited time to prepare and a limited time to speak, it's simulating that adrenaline rush. And let me tell you, anytime that I have somebody do this for me in a coaching session, it's always clunky and messy and awkward and uncomfortable. And I tell them, what I'm telling you is when I do this drill, and I do it at least once a day, it's always messy, uncomfortable, and awkward. But what you're learning is, where did my brain go? Why did I blank there? Why did I get nervous saying this? Why did I phrase it this way? And you can pause and reflect. Okay, here are the gaps. When I'm stressed, when I'm overwhelmed with emotion, here's what happens. And now you have something tangible that you can work on, whether it is organizing the structure of your, whatever you're saying, slowing yourself down, articulating things in different ways. At least now you have an identifiable target for confidence. And the last thing I would say is always, always, always record them. Always record them. And this is a very famous, very popular strategy. Record it, watch it once with no sound, right? Just watch how you're communicating with your nonverbals.
Yeah.
Then listen to it. Don't watch it. Just keep your eyes closed and listen to how you are communicating. And the most difficult one is get a transcript of it and read it out loud, word for word. Even the ums, even the incomplete sentences, you read it word for word. And what that does is that it teaches you. You become your own coach of, oh, I had 52 filler words in 3 minutes. That's a problem. Or, oh, I started all of my sentences with so. So that's a really tangible, free, easy 5 minutes a day strategy to get more comfortable in speaking. And it works not just in presentations, but in conversations. Because again, we're going to be in that high stress, high stakes mindset. And so we need to find ways to calm ourselves down and train our brains to think faster.
Yeah. I was going to ask you before you start talking about it, should one record it? And you covered
Always.
that. Yeah, record it. I like the 3 ways of then reviewing it. So one was without sound, just watch yourself. Then just listen without watching, and then reading the transcript. That is an interesting one. Like that one, all of this, by the way, is uncomfortable.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's awful. Actually, it's uncomfortable and it's awful.
And I see the value in it. I really see the value in that. And it's also, like you were saying earlier, it's uncomfortable, but it's totally safe.
Exactly.
Right. There's nothing at stake. You're not sharing, you're not on a stage in front of 1,000 people. You can do this either by yourself or with a coach or mentor to help you through it. And there's nothing really you have to worry about in regards to a negative consequence, which I think is why that's such a valuable practice.
Exactly. A comparison I always like to make with speaking is to golf. I'm a consistent double bogey golfer. I have been. I learned golf. Sometimes sometimes a little bit better, sometimes a lot worse. You know, it depends on a lot of factors. But
right.
Every time I get to the tee box, right, I think this is it, right? Today's the day. I'm going to crush it. I'm going to become the world's next golf champion right here, right now. And then, I swing and I hit the ball like 2 feet. And I think, oh no, what happened? Well, the reason I'm a double bogey golfer is because I don't practice. I don't golf very often. But we think because we have a voice, because we talk all the time, that, oh, well, if I stand up in front of a stage, in front of thousands, or even just in front of 20 or 10 or 1, right? If I'm just having a high stakes conversation, I should be able to deliver it. Well, if you don't practice, you're going to stay double bogey in speaking, right?
Yeah, it's really true. I mean, we don't think to train our communication. We just don't think to do it. And it's that old adage of, well, some people are just natural communicators. They're
Oh,
just so
yeah.
natural at it. And people just don't know that behind the scenes, that person has trained themselves. They've practiced, they've failed, they've tested things. I remember there was a period in my life, Eric, where I was just constantly reading about communication and
Yeah.
testing everything. I would try it this way, I try it that way, change my tonality, adjust my pace.
Yeah.
Maybe I have a deeper pitch. I would I was a guinea pig and I was just experimenting. This was when I was in sales years ago. And I'm so grateful that I did, because sure, now some of it comes natural, but it wasn't natural at the time.
Right.
I had to
Yeah.
train it within myself.
That's it. Yeah. Anything that we see as natural is actually skill put into practice, right?
Yeah.
Professional athletes, musicians, dancers, whatever art form you take. I went to go see Jerry Seinfeld stand up last week. Or not last week, last month. I went to go see Jerry Seinfeld last month, and he was phenomenal. And he just made it look easy. He was just like having a funny conversation. But I know that he spent days and days refining that. Days and days.
Yeah, he's known for that. He's obsessed with his practice. Like, he'll just show up at the clubs and just practice new material in smaller clubs to refine before he does a big auditorium. So it's funny you bring up Jerry Seinfeld, because I've learned that about him.
Yeah.
And how many years has he been doing this? It's not like he's new to comedy, right? He is one of the most well-known names in comedy, and he still recognizes the value in training and practice and rehearsal.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I'm curious to ask you about, because this comes up with a lot of people that I encounter, and it comes up in Gabriel's story. He's putting someone up on a pedestal. With Hugo, he sees him as, this is the leader that I want to be like. And the anxiety is so heightened around this person of perceived authority. How do you recommend people working through that, to work through that, so that you can communicate authentically and not put someone up on that pedestal?
Yeah, I think there's a few components. First of all, sometimes people didn't put themselves on a pedestal, but they just are, right? They're successful in their careers, they're influential, and that, through no fault of their own, makes other people nervous, right? Intimidated for good reason, right? I'm a huge fan of Amy Cuddy's work. If I ever met Amy Cuddy in person, I would be just totally frozen, right? I'd just be like, hello, thank you for your work. That's all I could be. Like, just, blank.
Do you do the power pose with her?
Oh, yeah, I would just greet her with power pose. Hello. That's it. Because I'd be so, again, I'd be so intimidated by this person who's done so much powerful work. Now, in the context of, okay, well, I look up to my leader, and I want to have conversations with him, but I have put my leader on such a pedestal. The thing to remember is, leaders have gone first, right? So this person has a head start on you. But if they can achieve it, especially if you're close to them, then that means that it is achievable. Whatever they have is achievable. Everyone, every leader, every direct report, every human being is just that, a human being. And a successful leader that I admire is somebody who has gone before me. So that's the first step. The second step is reframing, and this is true of not just when you're speaking at keynotes, or when you're speaking at conferences, or leading breakout sessions, or in conversations. If you begin with, how is this going to be about me? Then the nerves are always going to pile up, right? I hate saying this out loud, but it's true. Any sort of communication nerves they're all selfish, right?
Yeah.
What's going to happen to me, right? What if I look bad? What if they don't like me? Again, true, honest, real fears, but they're self-centered. So in the context of, I'm going to my leader to have a conversation, to build a relationship, or I'm going to deliver this speech, I get to remember that first, they're again, just human beings. And second, how can I add value to them? How can I support them? Because they're human beings, then they're fallible. they probably need something. They probably need some support. So what value do I bring to this person, to this organization, to this speech, to this audience? How can I be of service and a gift? Now, I don't want to say that you don't have intent that serves you as well. I think that, that's ambition. That's good. Some people are like, oh, it's selfish to only think of yourself. Yeah, it's selfish to only think of yourself, but it's appropriate to also think, how can I benefit from this? And when you find that mutual benefit, when you find that you two can collaborate and work together to a greater goal, that's where your nerves start to calm down a little bit. Because again, that's tangible. Okay, I'm going to provide value to this person in this way. I can do that instead of, I just need to build a relationship. Well, now I have.
Yeah, it's a shared benefit.
Yeah.
Or some shared value that we'll get through the interaction. And I say it to people all the time, and I'm so glad that you brought that up, which is when you are feeling nervous about speaking in front of an audience, that is self-absorption.
Yep.
It's self-centered. And it's not that it makes you a bad person. It's just acknowledge the truth of it, which is you're really focusing on you here, about you being rejected, on you not being liked, on you sounding stupid when you're feeling so anxious about going onto that stage.
Yeah.
So the best thing you can do is reframe it, like you said, and think about the person of whom I wish to impact and how I want to help them. And of course, like you said, when I help them, I help me too, because that's the way the world works. If I add value to somebody else, of course, there will be something I receive on the other end. And here's the other part about this, Erik, that I want to get your take on. People like Hugo, people who are in that position where it wasn't really what they intended to be, that person of authority that's intimidating, they don't like it when they get treated like, often, they don't like being treated like they're this person who is exceptional and special. Most leaders, there are some that are a little narcissistic, but most leaders actually appreciate when you just connect with them at a human level versus trying to treat them different than how you would treat someone else.
Yeah, that's it. Is I'm a human being, you're a human being. Connect with me there first, right? I think in the example with Hugo and Gabriel, it might be that Gabriel is trying to find a way. It seems to me that Gabriel, like most people, myself included, we want the fast track, right?
Yeah.
We want, how do I build a relationship with my supervisor now? How do I become like this person now? Well, it might just need to start small. Just connecting to Hugo as a human being. Do you know about Hugo? Does Gabriel know about him? Does he know, what does he do when he's not out at work? What does he like? What does he prefer? What's like? Connecting there could be a very good, tangible first step.
I love that. And these are things you could find out easily, you know? Like I sometimes I'll work with somebody who in a professional environment, they're like, well, yeah, but I don't know anything about this person of whom I want to, interview and or get to know. And I say to them, well, first you could talk to many people around them and find out what their interests are. And then the second thing is, this is a little hack. You can go onto LinkedIn and you can read about things that they've either written in the form of their content, or sometimes they put something in the recommendation. They wrote a recommendation about somebody, or they received a recommendation, and it gives you an insight that you can gather to then spark a conversation. I mean, you don't go up and said, "Hey, I read that recommendation that you wrote," but you find something that is interesting to them that is genuinely an interest of yours. It can't just be you fake it. And there are ways to do this where you can be smart about your approach and strategic, with it being not about just only what you get, but about that shared benefit that you're hoping to gather through the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you said is, it's simple, but it's not easy, right? It's still uncomfortable, but you nailed it. It's simple. It's like, okay, what can I find out about this person? What questions can I ask about this person? And there's people generally like to talk about themselves. Yeah. And in a work environment, sometimes it's a relief to not talk about work, right? Like, hey, I noticed you were going here on vacation, or you did that. Like, talk about their humanity before you talk about the content.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, Erik, I want to ask you, if you had a chance to talk with Gabriel, let's say you did a keynote at a conference, Gabriel attended, he hears it, he's inspired by you. And off stage, you have a chance to talk with him. He tells you what he's going through, issues with his ability to communicate confidently and his challenges with talking to Hugo. You listen, and rather than give him direct advice, you may ask him a question to spark some new ways of thinking. What would you ask him, Erik, and why?
The first question I would ask him is, let's just say for a moment, I had a pill, right? I had a pill. I'm going to become a billionaire. I have this pill. You just take this pill and all of your confidence, all your communication problems, they're going to be solved. Okay. If you take that Matrix style pill and you get the results that you want, right? From that conversation, from that speech, whatever, what does your life look like? How is it different? How is your life different having these skills that you feel like you lack? And from there, I think Gabriel's going to talk about, well, he's going to have a better connection with Hugo. He's going to be able to be mentored and maybe move up in his career. That's going to be able to support his family. He's going to be able to be more present in his family because he doesn't have these fears. And from there, once he sees what's possible for him, because I think that's essential, is that in order for a person to transform anything about their lives, they need to see what it would look like. And they need to see that, hey, the discomfort you're going to feel by achieving this is going to be minimal to the results that you get. Once they get that, then they're better able to take the next best steps to building confidence. So that's what I would love it. What would it look like? What would your life look like in a month after this pill takes effect?
Yeah, I love it. I like the analogy of the pill and it then leading towards the experience of what comes after having done what will essentially be the work that you and I talked through today. And Erik, this was fantastic. You're incredible. For anyone listening and for our listeners, I would recommend checking out Erik's work. It's erikdominguez.com. That's where there's a lot of great stuff there. I learned a lot about your keynotes and the trainings that you do. You have a lot of great resources. It's erikdominguez.com. We'll put that into the show notes. And I know you're quite active on social. LinkedIn is one of the places that you and I connected. So Erik, thank you again for your time today. This was an incredible conversation. I appreciate you taking the time.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me. I had an absolute blast.
What a powerful story, Erik Dominguez, of what he went through, from being afraid to speak to being a communications trainer and public speaking consultant. And we covered more than just communication in that conversation. We covered ways in which to live better, be more confident, work through fears. And I'll do my best to synthesize it into 3 insights and 3 actionable takeaways. The first insight: safety and comfort are not the same thing. They can feel similar. When you're feeling unsafe and when you're feeling uncomfortable, they have a similar sensation in the body. However, it is your job to discern, is it truly a threat to my survival, or is this just discomfort that I need to work through in order for me to grow? Second insight: communication nerves are selfish. It's selfish to be self-absorbed, even to be nervous about how you speak if you're speaking confidently, because your focus is on you. The best thing you could do is shift your focus into the person of whom you are attempting to add value to. Third insight: confidence isn't a personality trait. It's a skill. It's not something you're just born with. You can practice confidence. You can fail, reflect, and continue to get better if you really set your mind to it. And that leads us to the actionable takeaways. The first one is do spontaneous speaking drills regularly. Erik gave us a great example of using AI to prompt a way where you have to respond to whatever, something generated. And that random prompt, you then take a minute to prepare, then speak uninterrupted for, he said, I think 3 minutes. Record yourself. Get the transcription. Read through it. Watch it afterwards. This practice, you will naturally become a more confident communicator if you commit to a practice like this. Second actionable takeaway, take inventory of your wins, not just your missteps or your gaps. The mind always wants to focus on what went wrong, the mistakes you made, where you messed up. And in reality, you have a lot of wins that you're not always celebrating. And acknowledge those. Reflect on the wins. And this is a practice, something you could do daily. And the third actionable takeaway, before any high-stakes conversation, ask, what value are you bringing? What value are you bringing to the people of whom you're speaking to? Whether it's a one-on-one or a group or a large audience, make sure that you understand the value that you're bringing. It's a way to help you out of that self-absorption and into thinking about service. And when you get there and you recognize that you are adding value, then you will naturally feel more connected to your audience. You'll feel much more confident and influential. Join us on Friday's episode. I'm going to be diving into what I believe is the one thing that so often gets overlooked as to how anyone could be more confident. I've trained so many people, I've coached so many people, and I find this one thing keeps coming up over and over again. And the experts that I speak to, it seems that the underlying message is that people need to cultivate this specific skill in order to feel more confident and be perceived as more confident. And if that's important to you, for you to feel more confident, for you to be perceived as confident, then join us on Friday. You don't want to miss this episode. I'm going to go through this one thing and I'm going to give you the steps of how to cultivate this skill so you can be the most confident version of you. So until next time, thank you so much for listening.